And out in Los Angeles, the Petersen Automotive Museum stands as one of the most iconic car museums in the world. On March 15th, 2026, the day after the Fast and the Furious exhibit opened, Ralph and I headed out to check it out. Along with the new exhibit, we took time to explore the rest of the museum and made our way into the vault, where some of the rarest and most unique vehicles are kept. Before heading fully into the museum, Ralph and I made a quick stop at South Philly Experience, a family-owned spot located less than 10 minutes away from the Petersen. It was the perfect place to grab something before diving into the museum. They're known for their authentic Philly cheesesteaks, loaded with thinly sliced steak, melted cheese, and classic toppings, along with hoagies, sandwiches, fries, and comfort-style sides. It's a straightforward menu, but done right. After arriving at the Petersen, Ralph and I took a little time to walk through some of the general exhibits and grab a coffee at the cafe before heading deeper into the museum. From there, we made our way into our first featured exhibit, Totally Awesome, Cars and Culture of the 80s and 90s, diving into a collection of vehicles that really capture the style, energy, and pop culture of that era. One of the standout cars in the exhibit was the 1986 Chevrolet Corvette Indy Concept, a fully functional supercar prototype developed by General Motors. This wasn't just a design study, it was built to showcase what the future of performance cars could look like. Under the hood, it featured an experimental 2.65-liter twin-turbocharged V8 inspired by IndyCar racing, producing around 600 horsepower with a claimed top speed of about 180 miles per hour. It also came equipped with advanced features for its time, including all-wheel drive, active suspension developed by Lotus, and a lightweight body made from Kevlar and carbon fiber, along with dramatic scissor doors. What makes this car so important to the 1980s is how far ahead of its time it really was. The Corvette Indy concept pushed the boundaries of technology with things like a digital cockpit, backup camera, drive-by-wire systems, and even screen-based side mirrors, features that are common today but were almost unheard of back then. Even though it never went into production, its influence carried forward. Elements of its engineering and design helped shape future Corvettes, including the ZR1 in the early 90s, and even hinted at the mid-engine Corvette C8 that wouldn't arrive until decades later. In a lot of ways, this concept car represents the bold experimental spirit of the 1980s, a time when automakers were imagining what the future could be and weren't afraid to push limits to get there. One of the more unique vehicles in the exhibit was this 1983 Mercedes-Benz 300 GD customized by AMG. But to really understand it, you have to go back to the origins of the G-Class itself. The idea for the G-Wagon actually dates back to 1973, when one of Mercedes-Benz's major shareholders at the time, the Shah of Iran, requested that the company develop a vehicle that could serve both military use and civilian driving. He wanted something durable, capable of handling harsh terrain, but still refined enough for everyday use. To bring that vision to life, Mercedes partnered with Steyr Daimler Puch in Austria, a company experienced in military vehicle production. Together they developed what would become the Geländewagen, meaning go-anywhere vehicle. After years of testing and development, the first G-Class models were officially released in 1979, built with a rugged ladder frame, four-wheel drive system, and impressive off-road capabilities. This specific 1983 model represents an early version of that platform, but with a twist. Customized by AMG before it became part of Mercedes, it features a completely unique front end inspired by the S-Class, along with custom styling elements that blend luxury with off-road roots. So while today's G-Wagon is seen as a high-end status symbol, it all traces back to a request from the Shah of Iran. a vision for a vehicle that could handle anything, anywhere. One of the more unique and fun builds in the exhibit was the 1982 Pac-Man rod, a custom hot rod that perfectly captures the pop culture energy of the 1980s. This car was designed by Larry Woods, who was the head of design for Hot Wheels at Mattel, and built by Rod Powell in California. It actually started out as something completely different, originally called the Mork Machine, inspired by the TV show Mork and Mindy, before being redesigned to reflect the massive popularity of the Pac-Man video game. The body itself is made from recycled steel panels, including parts from Volkswagen Beetles, which adds to its custom, handcrafted feel. But what really makes it stand out is how it blends car culture with gaming culture. Pac-Man, released in 1980, quickly became a global phenomenon, influencing music, merchandise, and entertainment. And this car is a direct reflection of how big that impact was. The Pac-Man rod isn't just a custom car. It's a rolling piece of pop culture history, showing how the 1980s brought together video games, design, and automotive creativity in a way that hadn't really been seen before. Another standout in the exhibit was the 1998 Panoz Esperante GTR1Q9, also known as Sparky, a car that was way ahead of its time. This was actually the first purpose-built hybrid race car, combining a traditional gasoline engine with an auxiliary 150 horsepower electric motor developed by Zytek. At a time when most race cars were focused purely on combustion power, this car was already experimenting with hybrid performance. What also made it unique was its design. While most race cars in the late 90s had moved to mid-engine layouts, Panoz went the opposite direction with a front-engine setup paired with a rear-mounted gearbox. A bold and unconventional choice that made it stand out on the track. The GTR one was built to compete in endurance racing, including events like the 24 Hours of Le Mans, running in the highly competitive GT1 class. And to meet racing regulations, only 2 road-legal versions of this car were ever produced, making it extremely rare. In terms of lineage, the closest related car is the Panoz LMP1 Roadster S, which actually shares the same chassis and carries over much of the design philosophy and essentially evolving the GTR1 concept into an open-top endurance racer. Overall, Sparky represents a moment where racing innovation pushed boundaries, combining hybrid technology, unconventional engineering, and endurance racing into one forward-thinking machine. After wrapping up the first exhibit, Ralph and I made our way down into one of the most exclusive parts of the Petersen, the vault. Located beneath the museum, the vault is home to over 300 of some of the rarest and most iconic vehicles ever assembled, spanning more than a century of automotive history. This isn't your typical museum space, it's more like stepping into a hidden collection. Inside, you'll find everything from early 1900s automobiles to modern supercars, celebrity-owned vehicles, award-winning hot rods, and cars that push the limits of innovation. What makes it even more unique is how close you can get to the cars. The vault feels less like a display and more like being behind the scenes, surrounded by pieces of automotive history that you don't normally see on a main showroom floor. From here, we were about to get into some of the most rare and unexpected vehicles the museum has to offer. To really understand everything you're seeing here, it helps to step back and look at the bigger picture of automotive history, from the early 1900s all the way to today in 2026. In the early 1900s, cars were still experimental. Many of them looked like horse-drawn carriages, powered by simple engines and built by hand in very small numbers. That all changed in 1908 with the introduction of the Ford Model T, which helped bring cars to the masses through assembly line production. Moving into the 1920s and 30s, cars became more refined, with enclosed cabins, improved reliability, and the rise of luxury brands focusing on comfort and design. By the 1940s and 50s, after World War II, the automotive world really began to take off. This era brought bold styling, tail fins, chrome, and the beginning of performance culture. The 1960s and early 70s introduced the muscle car era, where power and speed became the focus, with big V8 engines dominating the streets. But by the mid-70s and 80s, fuel crises and regulations shifted things toward efficiency and new technology. Then into the 1990s and 2000s, cars became more advanced, with better safety features, electronics, and global competition shaping the industry. And now, in 2026, we're seeing a major shift toward electric vehicles, hybrid technology, and digital integration, while still holding on to the performance and design heritage of the past. So when you walk through a place like the Vault, you're not just looking at individual cars. You're looking at a timeline of innovation, culture, and how transportation has evolved over more than a century. As you move through the Vault, one of the biggest contrasts you start to notice is the difference between older cars and what we drive today. Many of the early vehicles from the 1900s through the early 2000s were built with mechanical simplicity in mind. They relied on physical components, engines, linkages, and basic systems that could often be repaired with hand tools and mechanical knowledge. You could hear a problem, see it, and in many cases, fix it yourself. Modern cars, on the other hand, have shifted heavily toward electronics and software. Today's vehicles are filled with sensors, touchscreens, driver-assist systems, and complex computer networks. While that brings major improvements in safety, comfort, and efficiency, it also means repairs often require specialized diagnostic tools and dealer-level equipment. In a space like the Peterson Vault, that contrast becomes really clear. You're walking past cars where everything is exposed and understandable, right next to vehicles that represent the beginning of today's digital automotive era. It's a reminder that while modern cars are more advanced than ever, there's something about the simplicity of older vehicles that keeps enthusiasts connected, not just to driving, but to understanding how the machine actually works. One of the more memorable cars in the Vault was this 1971 De Tomaso Pantera, once owned by Elvis Presley. It's not just the car itself that makes it special, it's the story behind it. Elvis actually purchased this Pantera in 1974 as a gift for his girlfriend at the time, Linda Thompson. But the car had a bit of a reputation for being unreliable, and according to one of the Peterson docents we spoke with, there was a moment where the car refused to start. And Elvis, clearly frustrated, decided to take it out on the car. You can still see the marks today, small impact spots in areas like the steering wheel and floorboard, left behind from that moment. They were never repaired, and now they've become part of the car's history. It's one of those rare examples where the story around the car becomes just as iconic as the car itself, turning it into a piece of both automotive and cultural history. To wrap up our time in the Vault, Ralph and I checked out one of the final sections, the Ultimate Racing Machine, 50 years of the BMW 3 Series exhibit. This display highlights the evolution of the BMW 3 Series, a model that's been around since 1975 and has become one of the most important platforms in BMW's history. Inside, the exhibit brings together race cars from every generation of the 3 Series, showing how the platform developed through motorsports, from early touring cars to modern race machines competing at the highest levels. Over the years, the 3 Series built its reputation not just as a daily driver, but as a performance benchmark, with racing success in series like DTM, IMSA, and endurance racing helping shape BMW's identity as the ultimate driving machine. What makes this section stand out is how clearly it shows the connection between track and street, how innovations in aerodynamics, chassis design, and engine technology from racing eventually made their way into everyday BMW models. It's a strong way to close out the Vault, going from the earliest cars in history all the way to modern performance machines, all connected through one evolving platform. After wrapping up the Vault, Ralph and I made our way back up to the main floor of the museum. From there, we continued exploring some of the other exhibits, including the American Motorcycle exhibit and Legends of the Dirt, along with everything else the surface level had to offer. Each section had its own focus, from two-wheel history to off-road racing culture, adding even more layers to the overall experience of the museum. One of the exhibits inside the Petersen focused on the evolution of Aston Martin, highlighting several of its models and the legacy behind the brand. Aston Martin was founded in 1913 by Lionel Martin and Robert Bamford, and quickly built a reputation for combining performance with elegance. Over the years, the brand became especially known during the David Brown era, which introduced the iconic DB series, including the legendary DB5, famously associated with James Bond. Through decades of ups and downs, ownership changes, and innovation, Aston Martin has remained a symbol of luxury and high-performance engineering. Today, the company continues that legacy while moving toward a more modern future, including SUVs and electrification. Seeing these models together really shows how the brand has evolved while still holding on to that signature identity. From there, Ralph and I made our way into one of the most anticipated exhibits, the Fast and Furious exhibit here at the Petersen. Titled A Fast and Furious Legacy, 25 Years of Automotive Icons, the exhibit celebrates the impact of the franchise on car culture over the past 2.5 decades.
What's the retail on one of those?
More than you can afford, pal. Ferrari.
Smoke.
The fucking pack off of the quarter, break them down. Get the scrap, if you happen to blow it, make surround sound. Pussycat on my lap, push it back and go to town. And rap on my back and I'm black as that. Back around like a nigga to the fuck. Bad now, but he's letting the drugs out. Gun blast in the background, I'm a
back for a 9-man facing the top. I put a drum on the head and cut no play cause I'm very invested in shots.
the fucking pack off of the quarter, break them down. Get the scrap, if you happen to blow it, make surround sound. Pussycat on my lap, push it back and go to town. And rap on my back and I'm black as that. Back around like a nigga to the fuck. Bad now, but he's letting the drugs out. Gun blast in the background, I'm a
my money attached emotionally. I get a clutch, and if you get too close to me, I'm at the top.
Inside, you'll find a collection of screen-used cars, stunt vehicles, and production builds that helped define the series. From iconic imports to muscle cars, driven by characters like Dom and Brian, each vehicle represents a different era of the films, and how they influenced real-world car culture, especially here in Southern California. It's not just about the movies, it's about how those cars inspired a generation of enthusiasts, builders, and fans who grew up watching it all unfold, 1/4 mile at a time. As we made our way up to the 3rd floor, this part of the museum really shifts into the broader history of the automobile, with a strong focus on how car culture, especially here in Southern California, has evolved over time. The exhibits up here highlight everything from early automotive development to high-performance supercars, showing how design, speed, and innovation have changed across generations. You'll see vehicles that represent major milestones, from early performance cars to more modern machines that push the limits of what cars could do. Unfortunately, Ralph and I were a bit limited on time while we were up here, so we weren't able to take it all in the way we wanted to. But even with a quick walkthrough, you can tell this level ties everything together, connecting the history, the culture, and the evolution of cars all in one space. After wrapping up at the museum, Ralph and I made our way out to grab some dinner and wind down the day. We stopped by Red Lobster to eat, just taking a moment to relax after everything we had seen. And to top it all off, we made one last stop at Wendy's for a Frosty, a simple way to close out a full day. From car meets to the Peterson, from history to modern performance, it was a packed experience from start to finish. And just like that, another day in the books.